everybody, welcome to my channel. Last week I did a video on baking. It was a departure from what I normally talk about, which are handbags, and I got a lot of requests to do more baking videos. So today I'm doing one of my favorite recipes. It's a blondie, and I actually don't eat cake, but I make it for my family. So when I started making blondies for my family, they loved it. I take it with me when I go to New York. I pack my carry-on with banana cakes, not banana bread, banana cakes and blondies and Mexican wedding cookies, and I take them to New York. So one day my daughter-in-law called me, and they were at a restaurant in Manhattan, and she said, "Ma, please don't forget to bring the blondies when you come." And I was coming in the near future at that time. And she said, because they're in a restaurant now, they ordered blondies, and it was so expensive, and it was nothing like this recipe. So I want to share this recipe with you. It has nothing to do with my ability at all. It's a very simple recipe, and it's the recipe that is an excellent recipe. And it is in this book, Alice Medrich, and the book's title is Chewy, Gooey, Crispy, Crunchy, Melt in Your Mouth Cookies by Alice Medrich. Now, she and I used to follow each other on Twitter, and I was able to ask her a lot of questions, and she's really a very devoted woman to her craft. This is a very straightforward, easy recipe to do. And I made it this morning, actually, and I put it to bake in the oven, and by the time I got out of the shower, it was ready. And this is what it looks like. You could cut it several ways. You could cut it into squares and make it 9 squares like a tic-tac-toe, like that. Or I cut it into bars today because my husband likes it in bars. I make him lunch every day, and he's able to eat this without a plate or a fork. Just holds the bar, and that's it. This is what it looks. Let me bring it closer to the camera. This is what it looks like. This makes 8 bars. Oops, my dogs are going to get that. 8 bars or 9 squares. And if you want a snack, or you want to make something for your husband to take to lunch, you could even do this in the morning before he leaves, or if company comes. It's really quick and really delicious. So, first, let me tell you how to have a baking pan that you don't have to wash. This recipe requires an 8-inch square baking pan. And Alice gives you a suggestion by taking a piece of tin foil, turning the pan over, placing the tin foil on top and molding it, and then pulling it off and then sticking it in. And I have tried that, and yes, it works. You don't have to wash the pan. However, the tin foil gets all crunchy, and it makes the marks. There's no unevenness on these bars. There's no unevenness. I found, in the way I do it anyway, that following the instruction to put the tin foil on top of and then made indentations on here because this tin foil wasn't straight. So this is what I do, and it's very effective. I use parchment. And this parchment comes from Costco. It's much cheaper this way. That's even too much. I hope you could see this. I put the parchment down, and I take a pencil, and I go around the pan. I cut off a sufficient amount so there's enough to hang over and fold over. So now you have a square on this parchment paper. I'm going to take the ruler. Oops, I cut a little bit too much off of there. Uh-oh. Okay, it'll work. And then I extend the square. And I'll show you how. I extend the lines from the top. And the sides. I have so that it looks like this. Now you take your scissor and cut out the corners. This is going to be a little short. It's really easy to do, and it might seem a little time-consuming right now, but it's not, and it's a lot better than having to wash the pan. Hope everyone's doing well. I hope whoever is in this storm is safe and warm. My friends across the country, and even in the East Coast, we're going to be getting the storm, I heard, so be safe and warm. We did not lose electricity yet, but it's snowing out now. Today it's supposed to snow all day. So hopefully we'll surpass losing our electricity, because I hate when that happens. I'm just going to make this a little shorter. So this is what it now looks like. It's actually the square with the corners of the square cut out over there, and just this. And this is what you do. You take your square pan. I always turn it on the opposite side of the pencil marks, so that the pencil marks face down. And you make sure one of these lines matches up to the bottom of one of these sides. And then just go to each side and push it in. And then fold over the sides. Fold it over so that it's not in your way. Actually, the one I cut short is actually just right. It ended up over there. So now you have this cake, this pan lit, already lined with parchment. No oil, no spray is needed. And this is how it looks. So when you're finished baking, which I'm not going to be recording the entire baking process, you just lift this out. You let it cool in the pan a while. I would say 20 minutes. And then you lift it out by these sides. And you put it on a cooling rack and let it cool until it's cooled, or you could actually cut it when it's warm and have the chocolate chips all gooey, and it's really good either way. So now that this pan is all prepared, I'll put this on the side. And we actually make the pan in a pot. And this is, I collected cookware before I got into collecting. I always loved bags, but before I got into collecting bags, I was collecting cookware. And this is Viking cookware. And I have almost the entire set except for the grilling pan, which it's stainless steel. I wouldn't use it anyway. I purposely didn't buy it. But we're going to make the cake in this pan. So what we do is, it requires a stick of butter. You don't have to measure the grams in this particular recipe. So we're going to melt the butter over low heat. Excuse me. Get rid of this. And this is the ingredient. I am doing it at a little higher heat just to make it a little more expeditious. It has rum in it. Now you don't have to add rum, and this is dark rum. You don't have to add it. I always added it, and everybody loves it this way. Actually, alcohol evaporates at 94 degrees Fahrenheit, so you're not going to be actually feeding children an alcoholic beverage. You're only going to have the taste of it, not the alcohol in it. Also, baking powder. Baking powder has a lifespan of 6 months once you open it. It actually is a longer lifespan. The retailer, I believe, calls it a year. But if you want your cakes to optimally rise, you'll throw it away after 6 months. What I do, I put the date on top, and mine was in November. So in May, no matter how much I use or don't use out of this, it's going in the garbage. Let me just check on this. Oh, and that is unsalted butter. That's sweet butter. And I never bake with salted butter ever. If you do only have salted butter, then in this recipe, which calls for 1/4 teaspoon of salt, I would omit the salt totally. And if you use it in other baking, you should adjust the salt because you need to account for the salt in the butter. What else was I going to show you? Oh, the eggs. This requires 1 egg. And most recipes that I bake require that the eggs be at room temperature. This author, Alice Medrich, did not specify if it should be room temperature or not. So you could do it both ways, because this recipe is not dependent upon the eggs being beat to a larger capacity to trap in the air cells that make the cake rise. This recipe isn't dependent on that. So let's see what's happening. It's getting there. And it uses also walnuts, and it is for chopped walnuts. I buy the chopped walnuts. I use, what brand is it? Diamond walnuts, and it's already chopped, and it's a lot more convenient. If you do chop your own walnuts, what you need to do is make sure you strain it so you don't have all the little crumbs in there as well. And what we're basically going to make is we're going to put brown sugar, and I use this brand. This is C&D, I believe it is. C&H. Brown sugar. I think this is the equivalent of Domino sugar on the East Coast. We don't have Domino sugar here. So this is light brown sugar. And the what are these called? The chocolate chips. Yes, chocolate chips. I use In this recipe, I use the Nestle's chocolate chips, semi-sweet. However, sometimes when I make this, I use this brand. Almost there, almost there. I use Deli. These are like premium chocolate chips. I use the dark cocoa 60% and the semi-sweet. I mix them. It requires 3 ounces, so I'll put half and half, or sometimes 2 ounces and 1 ounce, depending upon who the people are there. My husband doesn't like dark chocolate, so I seldom do that. But if I'm having guests, I will probably use this more likely than my husband. So I think we're ready with it. Yes. So this is the butter. It's all melted. The next step is to add the brown sugar, and this brown sugar is how much is this? 6.125 ounces. I measure it, I weighed it, and I put 6.15 just because my scale doesn't go up to that, and more sugar doesn't hurt. So we add it to this. We use a wooden spoon or a spatula to combine the sugar and the melted butter. I try to get as much fluid into the butter as possible. And then we add the egg, I believe. And you beat the egg with a wooden spoon into it. So this is 1 egg. Beat that in there, and then you add the vanilla and the rum. The vanilla and the rum. This is the rum. This is the vanilla. Love this vanilla. And here it is, 1 tablespoon of rum and a half a teaspoon of that. See, this is why I don't do baking videos, because I can never find my place. A half a teaspoon of vanilla. So you add that and beat that in. Now you add, you stir in the flour. I don't use the spoon for that. I use a spatula for that. And the flour is all-purpose flour. I used a King Arthur's, and the flour is 4.5 ounces, 4.5 ounces. And you have to add a half a teaspoon of baking powder and a quarter teaspoon of salt, which is, here's the salt. This is the baking powder. The baking powder is a half a teaspoon. I have a quarter teaspoon here, so this has a ledge where you're able to wipe it. So I add 2 of these. Of course, it's a quarter of a teaspoon that I'm using, but it's actually a half that you add. Ah, not in there. Oh my God, not in there. It's supposed to be in here. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Another reason I do not do baking online. Just add this and hope for the best. Okay, so you add the flour a half at a time, and it's supposed to have the baking powder in there, but it'll all come together. This is a very relaxed recipe. obviously. So I do half at a time so that it's easier to incorporate into the fluid. The flour did not have to be sifted unless you want to do that. If you are measuring flour with a cup, it should be sifted. If you're weighing it, it doesn't have to be sifted. So that's half of the flour there, and now the other half. And it's becoming a caramel, or as Junie calls it, caramel. Get all the flour in that you can, scrape it off the side, and fold it in, and it looks like this. Then you add half of the walnuts, and the amount of walnuts you use is 2.33 ounces, which is 2 1/3 ounces. Knowing that you have to use half, I already divided mine, so I could put half in now and fold it in. And by folding it, you just go under and flip it. And get it as even as possible, because this is gooey. And then you put it in the pan, I believe. Let me just check. Yes. So this is what you have right now. All the ingredients that we've done previous, and the walnuts, half the walnuts. You scrape it in the pan. This is my bowl scraper. Get everything I can. And now I take this offset spatula. This is by Atico. This is my favorite brand for spatulas. And put it in there, spread it as evenly as possible. Because if you don't spread it evenly, you can have a very thin side and a thick side, obviously, and they will bake differently because the thin side will be overdone. I always wanted to invent a spatula that had a level on here, because it's not always easy to determine what's level and what isn't. And I think that would be a really good invention. It's all in the pan, and if I turn it upside down, it's going to chop the other way, but so you get the idea. And now you sprinkle the remainder of the nuts on here. Try and get it as even as you could. And it's at this point that I actually add more nuts than the recipe calls for because we like it like that. My husband likes it like that. Just a little bit more. This is what we have so far. And now we put the 3 ounces of chocolate chips. Just sprinkle that. I did cut this side a little short. It's pulling down, but it'll be okay. When you do it, I would have like 2.5 inches extending, so it extends a little, so you can fold it over and it stays out of the way. This one is right in the way here. Also try and get the chocolate chips as even as possible. If you want to add more, feel free. This amount actually is a good amount, the 3 ounces. You're able to get in between all the nuts. And you could pat it down, so make sure it gets in there. And this bakes in a 350 oven for 20 to 25 minutes. And I should tell you I don't know if you could see inside the oven here, but the rack is at the lower third, not the middle, not the center. It goes one ring down or one ledge down. So it goes the lower third. And I use these in my oven. I keep these in my oven. I had 3, one just broke, so I'd have 2 remaining, because I always need to make sure that this is right by having it verified with another. And I use these. These are 10-inch cake circles, and you can get them in a box on Amazon or Walmart. And in Walmart they're $4. And that's what the cake is on right now. And they're very handy for all cakes, even when you're frosting the cake. Almost done. And this is what it looks like. So now this goes in the oven, in the preheated oven, and I know from baking it so often that this is absolutely not going to be brown enough. I like not too brown, just like a golden brown, and that will be 25 minutes on mine. And this is an electric stove. And then when you take it out, it has to cool, and that's it. It was fast. We all did it together, and it was fast. And when it comes out, you let it cool a little bit. You can have it warm, you can have it cold, and it's a really great recipe. Let me show you the book once more. Chewy, Gooey, Crispy, Crunchy by Alice Medrich. There's a lot of recipes in here that are good, that I think are good, and I don't make all the recipes in the books that I buy. I just make a couple in each. I used to spend a lot of time going to the library and taking out books and trying recipes, and this is one of the good ones. So thank you everybody for joining me today, and that blooper by putting the baking powder into the caramel was nice. but I don't think it'll change the effect of it all. This is a very easy recipe and very lenient. Well, thank you everybody. Have a great day. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, and everybody affected by snow or bad weather, stay warm and safe. I love you. Bye-bye, everyone.